Good afternoon. Welcome to today's live podcast show for the American Acupuncture Council. My name is Poney Chiang. I am a practitioner in Toronto, Canada, and I direct an acupuncture continuing education program at York University in Toronto, Canada. Today, my guest for the show is Dr. Cecilia Lucenti from Siena, Italy. Cecilia is one of the leading Italian acupuncturists. She graduated in medicine at the University of Siena. During her university years, she started to study acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and she has devoted herself now exclusively to the practice of acupuncture in her medical practice. Cecilia graduated in acupuncture at the Traditional Acupuncture School in Florence, and she also holds a master's degree in acupuncture at the University of Florence, and also has a certification in auricular acupuncture from the University of Paris in France. She has studied directly from numerous internationally renowned masters, and she worked at the Pitigliano Hospital, which was the first public hospital in Italy of integrated medicine that uses acupuncture on patients in the hospital. And it was during this time that she started working and developed a special interest in helping patients with neurological and orthopedic problems. And so this is the reason why the title of today's show is Acupuncture Neurology from a European Perspective. She is currently the scientific director of an advanced course in acupuncture and neurology from the University of Siena. And she has studied Korean style of aesthetic acupuncture and developed her own interpretation that she calls Ago lifting. Dr. Lucenti is the president of the Integrated Medical Acupuncture Association, which its mandate is to promote the knowledge and practice of acupuncture among medical doctors. She has won numerous sports titles as team acupuncturist to professional basketball teams in Italy, to professional soccer teams in Italy, and she's also the personal acupuncturist for Elena Vallatigara, who is the Italian high jump champion. It is my pleasure to welcome you today, Cecilia. How are you doing?
Hi, Poney. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to have the possibility to speak with you and with you all in America. Good evening from Italy. Thanks
And
for the
so
presentation.
thank you for participating with us today. I thought it would be very enlightening for our viewers to get a sense of how acupuncture is practiced in Europe, but also from an Italian perspective. So would you mind start off by telling us what is there a standard of practice for acupuncture in Italy?
In Italy, there is this characteristic that we are all medical doctors. So to become an acupuncturist, you first have to have a degree in medicine and then do a 3-year school where you have another habilitation to do acupuncture. This is a weird paradox because from a certain point of view, we are all medical doctors, so we can do also bad disease, and we know very well the pathology, but there is no specialization in acupuncture. There is no specialty in hospital. So in the end, it became very often for the medical doctor is a second job, and they are not able to arrive to a great technique level. So this is more or less our big problem in Italy. But in Europe, generally, there are some nations that have this focus on medical acupuncture, for example, Austria or Romania, or even France, but the law is not well applied, so there is many different practitioners. And the other nation, more or less, they allow everybody to do acupuncture with a school of 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
in Italy, there was this interesting story, because it was not a law that decided that acupuncture has to be done by doctor, but a judge with a sentence. Because in Italy there was this history, a long history of medical acupuncture, and I will show here in the I have a photo, if we can show, about some journal, scientific journal in Italy, speaking about acupuncture. You can see on your left a thesis done in acupuncture in Bologna University in 1839. On your right, you can see Alessandro Riberi. There was the first one who spoke in one university about acupuncture was Torino in 1840, and in 1841 you can see this other doctor, Zanobi Pecchioli, that was in my city here in Siena, and he described a illness treated by electroacupuncture in 1841.
Wow.
So the strong traditional medical acupuncture.
That's very interesting. I'm sure that predates any type of acupuncture in Canada or the United States by by maybe 100 years.
And
That's quite
also,
impressive.
we found some very interesting things about United States. Maybe I will tell you later when we speak about the reflexology, and of course Italy is older from this point of view. If you see this photo, we can see the first one who did a public clinic of acupuncture was Vincenzo Coppola in 1830 in Naples. It was
1830. Oh my goodness, that's
yeah,
unbelievable. Very
probably was
interesting.
the first public service in all the West, or
Yeah.
also in East, because public medicine is something that is very special in Europe. So and the
Uh-huh.
hospital was called untreatable, the hospital of untreatable person. So it's interesting.
So acupuncture is the secret weapon to be able to treat these untreatable patients.
Yes,
Very
also
interesting.
in that time. So we had many different medical doctor. We found more than 60 article in 19th century literature. And then the story
Mm.
goes on with many applications. For example, electroacupuncture was developed in Europe, in France, in 1830 by Cloquet in Paris, and then
Huh.
come back to East. So our association also developed a study from historical point of view to understand how much the reflex medicine is important and how
Yeah.
was used, because before the chemical
Yeah.
medicine, there was not so many instruments, not so many tools to
Right.
act on disease. If you did some surgery, of course there was not antibiotics, so was very
Right.
difficult. So there is a very interesting world. And we in Italy we had the first university course in Torino University in 1974, was developed
Uh-huh.
by Luciano Roccia, who teach in our program at the University of Siena. And another interesting thing was the Luciano Roccia was the first that make a study on cranial acupuncture. We will see later. And then this is our courses. It's called Principle and Technique of Acupuncture in Neurology. So we can focus both on how to do acupuncture in neurology, but also why and what you can achieve and how this happen. So it's very important to have all these things together for medical doctor to understand very
Actually,
well.
this is a perfect slide for my question because I'm curious. Why did you choose to develop a program, advanced program, to do neurology? Like, is there a need by the patient? Tell me a little bit about that, because I find obviously I'm very interested in treating neurological problems, and to be honest, this is the only program I am aware of that takes such a deep but also broad at the same time approach to tackle all the different ways that acupuncture can affect neurological the conditions in the body. And if it wasn't in Italian, I would take it myself. But I would love to know, what was the reason? What was the reason? What was the motivation behind creating such a program? Because it's unique. It's like, I wish there was something like this in North America.
I have to say that I was lucky because I have this luck
Okay.
to be able to study with many different masters. That was my life was enriched so much from this encounter. So mainly is luck, but you know that my goal is to share with everybody how much acupuncture can work and how much our work can do the difference on the life of the patient in so many diseases. I've studied many different styles and I see very good result in dermatology, in sports medicine, in aesthetic field that is unbelievable how much you can achieve, and also in all the other classical things. But neurology, you don't have any alternative in Western medicine. So we have to focus on this clinic that can bring so much awareness of how much acupuncture can work. And, we have so many research. This is a conference we did in Siena to spread this new, and is on our YouTube channel. And, we know so much about acupuncture. Now everybody say we don't know so much, it's not so well studied, but now is every aspect of acupuncture is well studied. We know for sure that the axon reflex that in the body is very well demonstrated, activate when you put a needle, activate not only the nerve, but also the vascular system or the reflex of the vascular system, all the cells that are in the skin, that is a immunitary organ, so it's so rich of every kind of cell, platelet, and every kind of mast cell, and smooth muscle cell, and every cell can activate so much neurotransmitter. And this stimulus is so significant that we arrive to the brain and we create a memory. But we did everything, and we know that a dense cranial stimulation is even more memorized from the body. And there are so many books, so many publications. You see the results when you search acupuncture on PubMed is massive now, is a sort of tsunami of research. But it's very difficult for medical doctor to arrive to this research, to understand exactly how to study, what you have to do to gain this result. We see every kind of study in very renowned journal, for example, Nature, the Neuroscientist, I put here stroke or molecular biology. So everything, every side of acupuncture is research, but neurology has some features that are unchangeable for us. Is cheap, is effective, have no side effect in this patient that takes so much medicine, is a reliable way to understand better the central nervous system. So we, looking at the results of acupuncture, we can see how the central nervous system work for sure. It's not our thinking, it's our observation, and is highly feasible in all rehabilitation contest in acute stage. Is so simple and sometimes very is just a matter of know some technique to change the life for the patient. You can work with logotherapy, with physiotherapists. You can work together with all the other professionals of the rehabilitation. So it's a safe way to raise awareness of acupuncture, and that's why I get interest in this. I proposed to the university this field of study and to of learning.
It's wonderful to for me to hear that it's being recognized at the university level, right? So it lends a lot of credibility and prestige to this level of training. I wanted to hear from you because I saw the pictures of you mentioned cranial or scalp acupuncture. I saw the picture of the ear there. Can you tell me, are there different branches or different sub-specializations within this approach to treat neurological programs, or what are the components of this?
I developed because I wanted, of course, the course is very short, so we have to digest everything for the medical doctor and give them all the whole path to follow. So I searched and I teach something that is very studied, very well understood in all this process from physiological to pathological intervention. And so I searched because every technique could be stressed to contain results in neurology. So there is this tradition, but it's a complex tradition. And you see, I put you here some medieval images of medicine, and you can see that there are so many points that are common with acupuncture point. There is a code here in Italy. There is a Squarcialupi code that was with organization so similar to acupuncture point. So there is a tradition, and everybody in the story studied how to obtain these results. And you see, I put here a model, a wooden model for acupuncture, and you see how the representation of the channels is different from the representation that we are used to see. And I put some of your interesting reconstruction from your study of the trigeminal point of your study.
So the central diagram that Cecilia is showing comes from a recent publication of mine where we looked at the association between acupuncture points and the trigeminal nervous system. And actually, Cecilia, this is actually the first time I've seen my picture beside an acupuncture meridian picture. And I have to say, they look really similar. Like if you see all the connection in here, right? All the connections in here, they really do look like the channel system.
Yeah, and this is an ancient model, so it's before all the going down of acupuncture also in East. So I think it's very interesting to understand different tradition, and because if you understand. And that's why I wanted you in my program, because we have to understand the anatomy, understand what the Chinese really wanted to tell us about this chart that we was leaving to us. So to don't get lost in this sea of technique. Now we can see all the technique of the world. So it's easy to get lost, to don't understand why you are doing something beside the technicality. So I started from the anatomy, from the reflexotherapy, so the study that was in Europe about the reflex that started with Chinese acupuncture in the 1700s, but then was developed, you see here in French, reflexotherapy, in Italy, reflexotherapy, but also in America, there was a very interesting study about endonasal reflexotherapy. So in this time, there was also the American that was study so much the reflexotherapy, and it's very interesting for everybody to study. So this was the first Italian study that I cited from Professor Roccia about cranial agopunture. So we started from this reflexology study that in Europe already developed auriculotherapy, because when we speak about European auriculotherapy, we speak about a whole study that started in 19th century and is developing till now, where they started to see with Noget study, with the study of the GLEM, Group Lyonnaise d'Études Médicales, the group of study, medical study of Lyon, and they started to put the base of all the reflexotherapy, of the systematization of all reflexotherapy. This was a book from Bossy, that was a professor in Montpellier of anatomy. So they started to work. This is another famous Bourdiol who worked so much in the reflexotherapy. And the auricular space is so particular because you can find in 7 square centimeters so many different nerves. You can track them down. You can see what effect has this precise stimulation on the brain. And till now, that the last year of this school is David Alimi, that the book is L'auriculothérapie médicale, and he developed this system so simple to study with the Western medical system, because that doesn't use Chinese terminology or something like that. They use just the correspondence of the brain with the outer space, with the receptor and the nerves. So it's very interesting for medical doctor to study how is precise the stimulation. Is not just something. For example, Alimi demonstrates that if you stimulate the thumb point in the ear, you have in the cortex the same effect of a real stimulation of the thumb. So these are this is hard science. We can't avoid this to have a more professional agopunto, a more interesting agopunto for our patient.
Cecilia, just a second. So can you go back to the previous slide? So what Cecilia was referring to is the photo of the gentleman on the bottom. His name is David Adeni. And so he is one of the neurophysiologist physicians that teaches auricular acupuncture, formerly in the University of Paris, Faculty of Medicine. And he did MRI research showing that when you stimulate the thumb, which part of the region of the somatosensory cortex lights up under functional MRI, and when you stimulate the corresponding thumb point in the ear, the same part of the somatosensory cortex in the brain lights up, demonstrating, without any shadow of doubt, that this precise activation of the brain as if the hand or the thumb is being stimulated. So this is the work of David Alimi, who was actually a previous guest on my show. If you're interested, you can go back and check that out. So Cecilia, it sounds like some of the material is more peripheral nervous system, like my research. Some of it is auricular, and you talked about cranial acupuncture. Is that okay? Yeah.
Because
okay. I'll let you talk. It looks like So we're talking about cranial acupuncture now. Okay.
Yeah, the other two pillars of course, the neurological acupuncture is the scalp acupuncture, of course, and the distal stimulus. We can do the distal stimulus in different way. I choose some technique derived from the Xinai Chao. Sorry for my pronunciation. From Tianjin Hospital, and that is very powerful in hyperpolarizing the nerve and make this nerve so active. But we can choose also other things. I mainly use from a scalp point of view to scalp acupuncture, and I find it very interesting because I found very important correlation with the vascular system of the brain. There is no time to do this, but it's very interesting to correlate the vascular system to the scalp acupuncture. And there is my first master, Yamamoto, that developed not just a scalp acupuncture. This is the important feature I want you to know, that is a complex trigeminal reflexotherapy who use the body to select a brain on a scalp. So you use all the reflex of the trigeminal area and the cervical plexus area to choose what point in the scalp will solve all the problem. And sometimes with Yamamoto scalp, you can see with just one point, so many problems solved. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting method, and I think it's something pretty unique. I want to tell you that Yamamoto studied in Germany medicine in the times when Germany and France was developing reflexotherapy in time of Bourdieu teaching. So I like to think that there is some connection between Japan and European reflexotherapy. And then that's the main topic of the course.
Actually, there actually is some connection. Some of the French auricular acupuncture master that you mentioned, from discussion with Dr. Adeni, I became aware that some of those auricular masters were looking into we're looking into reflexes in the temporalis muscle. So it's actually a somatotopy of the trigeminal nerve. So I think it's possible that some of that idea might have cross-pollinated with Yamamoto in his time in that area. Because German is also very into auricular as well. Very interesting. The acupuncture world is getting smaller. Okay.
Yeah. We discovered that people traveled a lot in the past. We think to travel, but our ancestors traveled much more.
Actually, yeah. In the course I used to teach for the philosophy of Chinese medicine, even at the time of the Roman Empire, there was delegations sent to China that was recorded in the Han Dynasty court manuals. So China and Italy has been good friends for well before Silk Road was even created.
And there was a Roman term for a Roman Empire term for cupping. It was cucurbite. It was this instrument for cupping is the same of Chinese, so it's very interesting, the transnational study of acupuncture.
So I have a question, more of a strategy question for you. So you apply peripheral body acupuncture, peripheral nerve stimulation of the body. You stimulate cranial nerves. You stimulate the scalp and the auricular acupuncture. I think of the ear and the brain and scalp as more of the top of the body, more central nervous system, whereas the points on the body are more peripheral nervous system. Obviously, they talk to each other, right? But how is there any generalization or experience you can share with us? How do you decide when do you have a top-down effect using the central nervous system to affect the peripheral, or then when techniques such as Shinna Kai Chao, for example, in my opinion, is more of a bottom-up approach, using from the peripheral nervous system to affect the central nervous system. There's so many different techniques, right? Is there a rhyme or reason when you use a top-down or when you use a bottom-up?
First of all, we know that bottom-up, top-down is a way to gain the attention of the brain.
Right.
So if you're looking something and there is a bird and you this take your attention is the bottom up, so the sense brings you attention. And there is maybe a director of orchestra, a conductor of orchestra who search a sound in the orchestra to see if the sound is precise. This is top down, so the brain searches something for the sense. Acupuncture, the time we do make this top down and bottom up stimulation collide and have a precise cognition of the brain of what's happening really in the periphery, and the periphery can transmit what they want to the brain. So open a window of connection of these two we can say mode of the brain, because you know from your study that are different the brain activate network, the fault network. So acupuncture put you in this window between two networks. So once we arrive to this, I want to show you the second, once we have the attention of the brain to the body and vice versa, we can send a message, a therapeutic message, because we have to remember that acupuncture is what the brain does after our stimulation. It's not what we do in our stimulation. So the purpose of our work is to match the top-down control with the bottom-up sensitivity. And how is possible to do this? My purpose, my thinking, my path is to understand that there is a cortical control, a body control, and a trigeminal area that speak to us about all the different areas that are in the lower brain that activate the communication with the different cortex. So there is a space in the middle that you have to activate to make this connection more specific and more straightforward. So I think, I'm not sure, of course, that we have to do something peripheral, something cortical like zoo scalp or standard scalp, and in the middle some trigeminal stimulation like or Yamamoto system that is in this between, or auricular system who activate very much the reticular substance, the nucleo parabrachialis, the thalamus, all the intermediate station of this communication. And of course, we can't avoid the traditional treatment to improve the metabolism of the brain itself, of the cell themselves. Because if not, you have side effects. If you treat, for example, Parkinson very much with cranial stimulation, trigeminal stimulation, if you don't have the strength in the brain to accept the stimulation, we will have more side effect. So we have to be flexible in this. And what I teach in this course is that to understand the characteristic of the needle itself, because if you needle something, you obtain some results. Also, if you needle without an order, this is very important. It's not reductionist. It's for us is a plus, it's not a minus. So top down, all the correlation with the motor system, with the different homeostasis of the brain, so impostation of the brain, settings of the brain, the somatotopic representation, but also all the different bottom-up mechanism, the fascia, connective tissue, cellular-mediate mechanism, neuromediate, vascular-mediate, trunk stimulation, and the characteristic of the flow of the brain, because in the brain there are some characteristics that are different in the circulation to justify how much acupuncture works, because in the brain the microcirculation is very different. I don't have time to explain, but we also use vestibular system to understand all this integration that happens in the middle. So is a way to understand all the physiological aspect to understand why it's important to do acupuncture.
First of all, I like how it's very a balanced approach, and it does not neglect the importance of metabolism and nutrition and the energy requirements of the body. And and I find it very interesting that your response to my question, whether how do you decide top down, how do you decide bottom up? It sounds like your focus is actually the bridge. So the reason why we do top down or the reason why we do bottom up is to reach the bridge. And I never thought about the bridge as being the brainstem, which the trigeminal nerve is, pons and medulla are part of the brainstem. So the trigeminal stimulation, based on what I'm hearing from you, is the key that connects the top down and bottom up. That's really, really interesting for me. And for just for our listeners here, auricular. Cecilia mentioned that the auricular includes trigeminal. That's because there's a branch of the trigeminal nerve from the mandibular division, so the third branch. There's a nerve called the auricular temporal nerve that runs just anterior to the tragus, and it innervates the anterior aspect of the helix and also the tragus area as well. So by stimulating that portion of the ear, you are indirectly having a trigeminal nerve stimulation. And so this is why Cecilia considers auricular acupuncture actually not just a top down, but actually part of the bridge that connects the cortex and the stuff from the spinal cord, and in between is the brainstem. Cecilia, we're running
And
out. We'll start. Yes.
I think the same, also the vagus do the same, because we don't have to forget that the vagus nerve act as a whole somatotopy for the brain to communicate with the body. So also the same thing of the trigeminal is also in the vagus.
Okay. We're starting to run out of time, so can you tell us? It sounds like you studied a lot of different types of scalp acupuncture systems, and I know it sounds like the Yamamoto style has a bit more of a trigeminal approach to things. Can you tell us, like, aside from the trigeminal aspect, do you have certain when would you use the Yamamoto style? When would you use the Jeju style or some other styles?
And I really don't have a rule. I see
Uh-huh.
the patient, for example, if I have a localized trauma, for example,
Uh-huh.
nictus or a localized trauma, I use more zoo scalp because I
Uh-huh.
know very well where to put my attention on. If I have a person, for example, with a complex brain trauma, for example, a car accident, they have more than one trauma, or long history, for example, hemorrhagic stroke with different problems. I prefer Yamamoto because it's not specific. You can,
Mhm.
based on the body, to regulate them himself. So
Okay.
is a bit more on patient than.
That's a very interesting clinically, because sometimes the multiple systems and multiple networks are involved, and where do you start, right? So that's actually I consider this a very valuable clinical pearl you're giving us. So that means that when it's not clear what the situation is, then you might want to start from more of the brainstem level. And
Yeah,
when there are more clear, areas of the brain, like specific stroke, and let's say the right parietal lobe, for example, then you can be more precise and apply cranial scalp approach.
and then you can focus on different symptoms, for example, the tremor, or but if you have
Right,
so much together, it's difficult with this kind
right.
of patient.
You can't put like 40 needles on a scalp, right? So you have to be selective and be precise.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you so
And
much. I'm learning a
I
lot
want
from.
I want to just to tell you that
Yeah.
also the tradition has so many points in the scalp that can help you also if you are not a professionist of all the scalp agopunture, but you can do something for your patient as just with the classical. For example, I want to show you this protocol that was created by Dr. Jean Rui in, I think, not so in the 20th century, and is called the point of three intelligence, because you can put in a child these 2 points, of course, 24 governor vessel and 30 gallbladder bilaterally, and obtain results on children with cerebral palsy, for example. Dr. Jean Rui demonstrated 20% of remission, but also in Vietnam, they have a children hospital in Hanoi that provides acupuncture for children. They as well have the success rate of 21%. So it's so much for this kind of baby. And if you want to just to do something without traumatize them, but helping so much them in generally in their development, you can use this protocol, so simple. And I suggest you to put the needle when you put the needle in the scalp. You have to be in the first more going to the deep, and then make the needle turn to be in the periosteum level. This is for avoid pain, avoid the fascia. So you arrive in a loose tissue that is over the periosteum, that is so functional from a vascular point of view, because the periosteum is full of blood, is full of everything, of immunitary cell. So you can activate very much the electricity, just like the transcranial brain stimulation, but more precise and more active, because we have a long-term potentiation. So we know that the stimulus of acupuncture is very well memorized from the body. So you put the needle inside, you leave 20 minutes, and you give something to the children. I'm very well sure that most of us know so much children that need a push in their development. So I wanted to give you this treatment for them.
Wonderful. So it's called the three intelligence. So you use governing vessel 24, gallbladder 13 bilaterally, and the needle retain it for about 20 minutes, you said?
Yeah.
I see from the photo here that looks like there
More.
might be a little bit of electricity. Is it from the bottom right photo? Is there electricity involved?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessary, or better? Yeah.
They have a school in Vietnam with electricity. They use very much, and this is the treatment that they give to this patient. I don't use electricity. The scalp, I have to say, because I don't know so much electricity.
Do you just put the needles and leave it, or do you do any rotation, any stimulation to those needles?
Yeah, usually I stimulate them if it's possible with the children, because you know
Some
when
will
the
let you,
children
some will not. Yeah. But if
yeah,
they're willing, they okay.
but
Right.
the children is so sensitive that even if you don't stimulate, you can see
Yes.
from
Yeah.
one treatment to the other the
Yeah.
difference. Then of course you can put everything you want, because usually children with cerebral palsy has some problem with with the vestibular system, so maybe you want to use some occipital area for the balance, but just with these three needle you can achieve a strong effect. So try, and then our public will tell us if it worked.
That's great. I have some cerebral palsy patients as well, so I'm gonna try this and let you know.
You
Cecilia,
have to.
yeah, Cecilia, we are running out of time, so we're gonna have to wrap up. Um, how can we get more information about your books or the courses that you direct? Is this information that's on the screen right now where we can find out?
I put my
Yeah.
website, my YouTube channel. Unfortunately, most of the stuff is in Italian, but we
Yeah.
will provide also English in the future, we hope. So maybe we can do another show to go deeper in this field that is, I think, is the our has to be our focus for this clinical
Mm-hmm.
effectiveness. I see result with the system after 10 years, after 20 years. I treated in this last course in Siena a lady, 42 years old, with
Mm-hmm.
20 years of history of brain trauma, with a huge tremor. I didn't see something like this anymore. So I treated in the university, and we was able to achieve a stopping of the tremor in 6 months
Wow,
after 20
amazing!
years of disease.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Um, Thank you for your time today. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did as well. If comments, please feel free to post them. And Cecilia, thank you very much once again for your dedication to acupuncture, for your passion to elevate the standard practice in Italy and beyond. And I think I have to study Italian so I can come study this course. Okay.
Yeah, you have to, because I want you in Italy much more, because we need to have all the process, all the anatomical aspect, the physiological aspect. We have to grow together, because now is the moment that we have everything to make it happen in a very good way for our patients. So thank you for the invitation, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.